All right, every guest that we have on the Earn It All podcast is a special guest. But in light of some things that Adam and I have gone through recently and some of the recent events, I think today we truly do have a special guest on for a bunch of different reasons. So Michael Johnson, welcome to the Earn It All podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Dude, absolutely. I'm so happy to talk with you today because your life is remarkable, and what you're teaching people these days, I think everyone needs to know. You know, we talk about being capable all the time. And a lot of the times for us, you know, from the fitness side, that means being strong, being fast, being mobile, you know, especially under less than ideal conditions. But your background in essentially, you're a deadly force instructor, and we've taken your courses and we've seen it firsthand what that means. So I want to unpack that a bit. But one little soundbite that people can take away about you, I think, is you teach good guys how to be dangerous towards bad guys. Mm-hmm. When if you think about it, that's like, okay, what that means self-defense, that means self-offense, that means a lot of different things, but you can kind of put it in that category, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So I wanted to talk to you today about some stuff, like I said, that Adam and I experienced last week when we were involved in helping train guys from federal agencies and local agencies, SWAT, DEA, Homeland Security, FBI. We were aggressors in some active shooter training at a school out in Mesa. And both of our eyes opened up to some of the same things. But moral of the story was like, man, we need to talk with Michael Johnson because so many people really have no idea how to use their body. And they think of self-defense, they usually think of guns, right? That's, okay, I need to carry a gun. But you really opened our eyes to how dangerous someone could be with a clipboard, how dangerous someone could be with a magazine or the hat I'm wearing. So I kind of wanted to start to unpack that. But you've been in martial arts since you were 2, mm-hmm. right? So take us a little bit into how you got started with it and why you think it stuck with you and how you've become an expert.
Sure, absolutely. And I think expert's a relative term. But we'll unpack that also. My grandfather started in the martial arts back in the 1920s, and he had a black belt in judo and jiu-jitsu, and that's one of the first things he did for himself. And as a black man in that time frame, there weren't a whole lot of opportunities for them to have their own, if you will, opportunities.
Yeah.
Let's call it that. And then my dad started training under him when he was about 11, 12 years old, got his first black belt under him at 16 and went on to go train with Bruce Lee from 67 to 69. And then after Bruce died, my dad flew to China and trained under Yip Chung, who's Yip Man's son. And Yip Man was Bruce Lee's instructor. And then they came back to the U.S. They wanted virgin territory, so they moved to New Mexico to start their martial arts school. And then I started studying when I was 2 years old. For whatever reason, I was the only one of the kids that kind of picked up the martial arts. I loved it. Probably about 4 or 5, I had a knife to my throat. This individual was telling me they're going to slit my throat and stuff my body behind the television so my parents couldn't find me. And that feeling of helplessness and not knowing, like, it's hard to explain because I remember it almost like it was yesterday.
You were 4 or 5 years old?
I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I remember how weak I felt and that I wasn't strong enough, right? Like I couldn't fight back. I couldn't stop it from happening. And the feeling of, like, not everybody understands this. There is an energy of death, right? You can feel its frequency. You can feel when it's present. And I felt it that day. And the Lord protected me, kept me from being killed. And as time went on, that created a ton of conviction inside of me and what I wanted to give to the world. And I had a bunch of other events that took place in my life that anchor that conviction. But I wanted to be able to take people and teach them how to protect themselves without them having to train 8 years to get a black belt. Because everybody always goes, oh, you know, you train at my school for 8 years and you memorize all these katas or you do all these belts and you'll be good. Well, that's great. What am I going to do? This guy's mugging me today. I'm like, dude, I just signed up for a self-defense class. If you could come back in 6 years, it would be awesome. It's not going to work, right? So what I wanted to do was figure out the fastest way that I could teach people how to eliminate a threat that's bigger and stronger than them. And that's something that was convicted in my heart, even from a young age. And thank God I didn't have my own personal computer back then. I would have ended up on a watch list, which I'm sure I'm on now.
You probably still are.
But yeah, I probably still am. But like, I'd go to the library in my school and I'd study terrorism and I'd study guerrilla warfare and just like the things like, how did these people work? How did their mindsets work? And then I started realizing there's only 3 types of attackers: criminals, crazed, and crusader. And if you can create a theoretical minimum to defense and attack, then you can actually teach people extremely fast. There's something in physics called the theoretical minimum of physics. And I learned this when I was training a gentleman named Vittorio Cristini. He's one of the top 99 mathematicians in the world. This guy's freaking brilliant. And he said there's the theoretical minimum of physics. And if you understand this core foundation, you can actually build your own fingerprint in physics, basically, and you understand everything. I was like, dude, that's exactly how our combative approach is. As long as you understand that baseline, you can create your own fighting fingerprint.
Yeah.
And so what we learned was how we could train people. And I had a young woman who came to me, she's getting ready to leave for Africa. And her uncle was raising her. I didn't understand all the details at first. And she said, I don't want to train with you. And she didn't like men at the time, which I get why afterwards. She literally had watched her mother be murdered by her stepdad when she was a child. And so she was obviously not thrilled with men. And she was now leaving to one of the most dangerous parts of the world. And this guy wanted me to train her. And he's like, oh, and by the way, you have a month. I was like, all right, awesome. We can make this work, right? And the short version of a longer story is by using associative linkage, neural pathways, creating positive associative linkages to things people already know. We were able to train her in under 3 weeks, and we had her run through the shoot house. And I had 4 different men attack her, and she took them all out. And that was when I was like, we got to go deeper into this. I like this.
Yeah.
Right. So our objective is to train good people how to be dangerous to bad people in a very short amount of time. There's only 3 ways the human body needs to be shut down: timer, switches, and mechanics. And if you understand these bullet points and you understand the way to function in high risk and high stress environments, plus controlling your own internal dialogue, which dials back to you being made in the image of God, you have 3 different tongues and they'll argue with each other. If you can learn how to make them speak as one tongue, you can master the flesh. You can also master your mind, because your flesh is nothing more than a subconscious. It's a manifestation of the subconscious mind. So what you choose to think and you condition in that purity of your mind, it will manifest itself with chemical releases, endorphins released throughout the body. And as you saw, and we saw this in the underground fights, that the human body shifts when the mind shifts. Like, you'll hit a dude with a car and he'll get back up when he's in that mode. He'll feel it later, but he's not going to feel it right then and there. And that's the thing that's so crazy. Is you're like, oh, I'd take this board and I'd hit an active shooter in the head with it. Dude, once their brain gets in that zone, it's not going to work.
Right. And
the hardest part with most people that we see, both in the mixed martial arts industry and martial arts, and even in law enforcement and military. And it was funny because I worked with the 512th Rescue Squadron for a while. And one of the things that the colonel said is, he's like, everybody thinks because we're in the military, we know how to fight. He's like, that's not what we do. Like 90% of the people in the military don't know how to fight. Now, if they're a tier 1 operator, totally different story, right? Marines, they're different altogether. I love those guys. They're just like robots that kill, right? And you look at different guys like Army Rangers, and obviously those specialty areas, they have that. But when you look at human beings being able to go against somebody with conviction, you realize that the weapon is no longer a gun, a knife, chemical agent, bludgeon, edge, projectile, improvised. It's none of those things. It's conviction. You try to take a child from a mother and she'll kick the shit out of you, whether she has training or not, right? Conviction ties us between the ether of the other dimensions. And when we start learning how to activate that part of our spirit, we elevate in consciousness to be able to do what's necessary to eliminate a threat quickly in front of us. And so when you match the belief systems, and then you match this what we call mental syntax, and then you match the theoretical minimum of defense, when you combine those 3 essence together, you can train somebody who's never had training before in their life in a day, and they'll beat somebody who's been doing it for 2 to 3 years.
So I would imagine that in order to get to that spot where you are able to basically just act on your conviction, you probably have to go through some scenarios to get kind of the butterflies out. Like, you probably have to get punched. You have to be in these high stress environments, because I think that's one of the biggest things that when people hear that, they're like, yeah, I get it in theory. And maybe they feel like they have the nuts, or they feel like they have the balls to do it. But if they've never been tested and they've never been in that any sort of situation like that, I'm assuming that's part of the training. Like, you need to get punched. You need to be under stress. You need to be in duress to even see how you perform, so you can get through that cloud and start to think clearly when it really happens.
Absolutely. There's cross-reference platforms though too, right? Like, you just don't have to walk up and blast somebody in the face, right? Yeah. And it's bad for business. Students walk in, you're like, line up, whack, and you just start hitting people, right? Nobody wants to come back. So what we've learned is that there's multiple ways to condition that without actually having to get struck, but learning how to deal with discomfort. Cold water is a great way to do that, right?
Sure.
What human beings struggle with is not pain, it's aversion. They struggle with this concept that like they don't want to deal. You guys deal with it in the fitness industry, right? People, I want to be in shape. No, you don't. You're not willing to be uncomfortable enough.
You like
to be
the
in
idea
shape.
of it, and that's it.
Yeah, you like the idea of it as you're throwing down 15 Big Macs like a pelican down your throat.
And you
right?
don't like
it
the idea enough to make a change.
Right. And the change has to come from conviction. So you start building these teeny little things like a cold shower, right? Dealing with maybe standing on one foot and your legs cramping and you're getting there. And then your only job is to condition your mind to stay calm and to be at peace. Breath hold exercises, because we're all addicted to oxygen, right? So you can learn how to start holding your breath and how to do it more. Now, there's guys out there that can beat me on this. My longest breath hold is like 4 minutes and I think 28 seconds. But for me, that's good, right? Because you start wanting to panic. You start wanting to freak out. Can you keep yourself calm when you want to freak out? If you can own your mind, you can own your body. And there are certain people that are good challenges for that, right? Like sometimes it's your wife or your girlfriend, because they know just the right buttons to push. And one of the things I learned recently is you got to like exercise that. That's a training drill, right? Like, can I stay calm and understand that what's coming out of that person's mouth actually doesn't mean, and it doesn't have to be a girlfriend or wife or whatever. It could be friends. It could be anybody. But I've started doing this with people as a whole in general, right? Like, how do I hold this together when I really want to throat check a fool? Right. And as you get older, as you guys know, your bullshit meter goes down. Right. Like you get these people that are subject matter experts and like, yeah, well, I saw a video on YouTube. And you're like, fuck. Right? Like you're just ready to hit them with a tank, you know, and you're trying to keep it together, but it makes it really tough because you understand the ignorance and it's dangerous. So the real thing is, can you get comfortable being uncomfortable? And then can you recondition the associative linkage to actually be something you enjoy?
So let's talk about how you start to teach this, because Adam and I both took your Dangerous in a Day course, which I was blown away. Like, it was phenomenal. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
It hurt. It was great. But it hurt in a good way.
Yeah.
It's the most fun I've had in a long time.
Yeah. So what would you tell people that are like, okay, I know I need some of this in my life, but they've never taken any sort of course. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what to do. Maybe they'll sign up for jiu-jitsu and they think they're starting to get into it. I think there's a faster path to it. And I think it's taking courses like yours, ones that kind of fast track all the, like you said, I think you said 6 years of training and getting these different belts and all that before you're ever really tested. Dangerous in a Day essentially throws you right into the fire.
Well, and it's the objective, right, is to make you dangerous in a day.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to do when I was younger was, how can I if I knew bad people were coming over that mountain tomorrow, and I got a bunch of people, and Sun Tzu had to do this, right, with the general's wives, because he wanted them to be his bodyguards. And I've got a bunch of people who may not want to train. They don't know how to train, and they're not naturally violent, right? Like, which is probably a good thing for most of society, right? But in order to be a good man and be able to protect, I think you have to get comfortable with violence. It doesn't mean you want to hurt people. It just means you're willing to, if it gets there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what is it that you're fighting for? So before you sign up for any course, you need to figure out what it is that you want to do. Because some people say, I want to get in better shape, so I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. You'll get that as a byproduct. And I think jiu-jitsu is great. I just don't think it's the end all be all. And a lot of people will argue that they think it's everything, but like, you need to be a Renaissance man. If you can do really good jiu-jitsu and I have an AR-15, you're fucked, right? Like, I'm glad that you can roll around, but I'm going to ventilate your ass and then you're going to have some issues, right? So now we have to sit down and go, okay, like, what else should I learn? What else is on that topic? So pistol, bludgeon, edge, projectile, chemical, improvised tools. How do you put these things together and figure out a way to make them function in one breath? Because the weapon is not the art. The man is the weapon. You should be able to walk into any room and turn anything into a weapon. Because the reality is, in an active shooter scenario and in what's called a non-permissive environment, when you walk into environments like that they don't allow guns, because clearly that makes everything safer. It's the stupidest. Yeah, we're not going to go there. But so moving forward. So when you end up in that environment and you're the only one that's not allowed to bring a gun in, and you're a law-abiding citizen, so you try to abide by the rules, you need to be able to look at an environment like this and say, what are my weapons? What do I have access to? Okay, I have electricity. I've got power in this room. If I have certain types of conductors, I can leverage that, right? If I have certain things inside of the Ethernet cable, like you tie Ethernet cable in half and literally it holds like 250 pounds, right? That's an amazing garrote. So when you start learning how to like weaponize your environment and figure out everyday instruments that are functional that nobody's going to take from you, right? Like you're never going to get on TSA's flight and they're going to go, do you have an Ethernet cable? We're taking that from you.
That's a good point.
They might now. Yeah.
Yeah, fuck. Don't put
Just
this
kidding.
in. Yeah, don't edit this out, right? While sitting there with my Ethernet cable.
Yeah.
But like there's things that you need to do. Good call. There's things that you need to do where you need to actually think through it and go, what makes me dangerous is me. This is what drives me nuts about most men today, where they're like, I'm going to get a gun. I'm going to get a gun, and if I have a problem, I'm going to shoot you. You're like, okay, well, you might shoot yourself.
Mhm.
You
Or
should have some
someone you
training,
don't
or
want to
somebody
shoot.
you don't want to. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
so many different things you need to understand about warfare as a whole. And the real thing is that you're learning how to preserve human life by removing that which is a threat to it. And that should always be your mission. So you start with your mission on this training journey. And then you go, what is it that I want to do? If you want to become really good at guns, then you shouldn't take a jiu-jitsu course. You should take a firearms course.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get really good at being a Renaissance man, a tactical Renaissance man, and we have a 3-day tactical Renaissance man course, which is super awesome. You run through and we kidnap you at the end. It's freaking badass. but you want to learn how to like get to that level. And what is it that I want to do? Your woman, if you're married, or your girlfriend, your kids, those are your battle buddies. They should also know how to deal with that stuff, right? Because middle of the night, and I've gone to courses, and I'm sure you guys have too. They're like, all right, so you get these 3 to 5 guys, and they're going to stack on you in a doorway. I'm like, I have a question. Where did I find these guys?
Yeah.
Right? Like, dude, I live in Scottsdale. I'm not
The only one.
Scottsdale, because there are guys out there that are like that, but a lot of them, they may not be the tactical door stackers, right? So when you sit down and you start looking at things, you might want to edit that part out too.
No, we're gonna leave that. Yeah, that needs to stay. Yeah.
But when you start looking at this approach to life, you kind of have to go, like, if I have a woman, that's my battle buddy.
Mhm.
My daughter is my battle buddy, right? Like when she was little, she could feed, fire, and function a weapon better than most men. And then COVID happened, the giant scamdemic, and she wasn't allowed to go to school. I don't know how you guys.
No,
Anyway,
leave that
moving
in there
on.
too.
So now
Yep.
she can't go to school.
Yeah, we can talk about that
Yeah.
scandemic all day long. if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah.
So she can't go to school. So they're like, you got to teach her at home. So I brought the gun simulator home.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, for the next hour, we're doing gun work. And my daughter is a little badass, right? She's flicking the stuff out. She's chambering. She's shooting. She's making decisions. I'm like, high five, dude. Rock.
Mhm.
Right? And that's your battle buddy. So now if somebody breaks into the house, we have a strategy.
Yep.
Her room was on the opposite end of the house at the time, and mine was over here. And I was like, this is what we're going to do, and this is how you're going to function.
Yep.
You're going to stay at this level because if daddy sees a man walking, he's going to be at this level, and I'm going to ventilate him. And then you will call out this, and then we'll do, like, we had this whole battle plan. There's bonding time with fathers and daughters, right? So I think that it's important to be able to look at what is your mission?
Sure.
What is your job? And don't get overwhelmed by it. Keep it simple. The theoretical minimum of defense shouldn't be any more than 10 to 15 concepts in each platform.
I like that. I want to go back to one thing you talked about. Let's talk about clipboards.
Sure.
Because we talked about going to the airport and we talked about Ethernet cable and stuff, but
Yeah.
no one's going to stop you carrying an aluminum clipboard, going through TSA and all that kind of stuff. And
Well, they might
We-
now.
well,
Yeah.
Yeah, this Earn It All podcast just
Well, we don't let-
everybody
yeah,
within
we don't let
advice
TSA
tools.
listen to
Yeah.
this. That's all right.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but in your course, we even got to practice. You had clipboards for everyone to practice how to use it. So, what are some of the things that people listening could be like? All right, maybe I know I can't take a gun to the airport, or maybe I don't even like guns, or I'm not comfortable. I'm not there
Sure.
yet. Like, what are some other things that they can look at? Because I think knives probably come next. I think they're probably just as dangerous, maybe more.
Probably more because
Um,
they're silent, don't have to reload them.
Yeah, and like if you don't know how to use it, I don't want anything to do with a knife fight after you and I fucked around with those
Yeah.
fake knives. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah. I think you
Um,
stabbed me 15 times
yeah.
before I realized what was happening.
Dude, if I had an opportunity to shoot you at 1,000 yards, I would. You are a
Oh,
scary
yeah.
human being.
For sure.
Right? Like I have never seen a human being as big as this guy freaking doing backflips.
Yeah.
And
And
he's
lifting
like,
up.
and I can go for 50 minutes. And I'm like, damn.
No, he's,
Yeah.
that's why we call him the Juggernaut.
This
Like,
guy's
it's
a
real
Viking.
thing. Yeah.
You know, like I'm looking at him going, that would be quite the opponent.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, without taking a course, but like someone listening, like just maybe help them identify, what could be used as a weapon. Maybe it's at their house and they don't have guns, they don't have knives, they don't know, they're freaking out. Like what clipboards especially, I think is my favorite one. But what's your theory on weapons in general when it comes to just like right here in this room?
So you should understand that you yourself are the weapon. And when you become the weapon, as poetic as that sounds, then everything you touch becomes an extension of that. So if it's a ball cap, like I was showing you, the bill of the ball cap used in the right area, there's hard targets and soft targets. If you apply it correctly to a soft target, it'll work very well.
That was a really interesting one for me, because I was thinking when you said that, you're like, yeah, ball, and I was like, I mean, I guess it's rigid-ish, and then you did it, and I think you did it on.
It was me.
Yeah,
right in the chest.
Yeah, right in the chest, and it was like it took the wind out of him, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, and the hard part is like
Yeah.
with most guys that teach this stuff, and this is why a lot of it's considered so fake and people just get annoyed with it, is that it's like guys who have never fought.
Yeah.
And when we did the underground fights and we fought against this group in California to start with, and then we obviously did our own, but there's no rules, no judges, no refs. You can fight 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 2-on-5. And we were fighting there were guys in there with bullwhips, chains, sticks, my socks from Thailand, tonfas. There were two dudes fighting with like a microwave, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like you fight with what you have, and then
Sounds
you start
like something I would do.
Dude, it was awesome. And there's no weight classes, there's no rules,
Yeah.
so you get to experience it for real, and it brings out the truth, right? And this is where I think a lot of the jiu-jitsu community, which I was really proud of them for doing, they started going, dude, we need to figure out some other aspects, right?
Mhm.
Because when you fight 2-on-2, jiu-jitsu doesn't work.
Nope.
All of a
You
sudden
get
you're rolling
stomped
around
out.
with one dude and the other guy's stomping on your head, and you're going, well, they missed that part in the class,
Yeah.
right? So you really have to be somebody who wants to be a Renaissance man, right? So that you get into that part where you just go, oh, I'm going to snap into this. I'm going to start doing whatever it takes to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But in that environment, we would find tools and items where like, I want to fight with that and see if it would work. And then we had our own group called Overpressure, and we did that, right? And you'd be shocked how many things you whack somebody in the head with it and it breaks, and you're like, damn, well, now I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I mean, one of my fights I fought with nunchucks, and I was strangling the guy. Breaking your mic here. Now, strangling the guy. What I didn't know is he had taken cocaine before the fight. And let me tell you something about cocaine. That's a wacky drug, right? Like this dude maybe was 100 pounds, and he was not feeling anything I was doing to him. And I was like, okay, new consideration.
Mhm.
People on narcotics,
Yeah.
So it was a whole new world. But I was strangling him, and I started looking at his face. He looked like he was kind of going out a little bit, and then nunchucks popped right at the same time that he passed out. I thought I broke his neck, and I was like, oh crap, I'm going to prison, right? So I'm like, medic, right? I'm trying to get people in, and like a few seconds later he comes back and tries fighting again. We're like, no, you're done. But the concept of testing it in real time is what makes it true for those who have to use it when they need it. Maybe they can't, like you can't show up to a business meeting with a black eye or a broken nose. So everything from, I'd say, Ethernet cable, there's a lot of structure about belts. I think they're okay under the right conditions, especially if you're coming for a blind attack. But when I see guys like whipping people with belts, I don't think that's sufficient. You're just going to piss them off. Coffee is an amazing weapon. A cup of hot coffee, pins. Again, the notebooks. Steel pen is an awesome tool, but also you want to get notebooks that have the spirals in them. And that's not as much for weapons, but also think of yourself as a Renaissance man. If you have to pick a lock or you have to actually slide it down the door frame to get something out, like you should be the freaking MacGyver of 2024. Everything you touch should be an asset, right? So you start thinking that way, and you're like, oh, a book. What can I do with a book? You can start a fire, right? You can hit somebody in the neck with it. You might be able to use it for something else, right? It's a dryer lint. Dryer lint is a great way to start fires. So you start thinking of different ways to start thinking outside the box, so that you're not just going, oh, well, let me just throw that away. Everything has a use. So in any environment, you should be looking for those types of uses. A light bulb, right? If you take your t-shirt off, and we talked about this in the course, and somebody's coming up to you and you take a light bulb and smash it in their eye, that's going to suck, right? So you're just thinking differently. You're learning how to weaponize your mind and take advantage of people's weaknesses, and then be able to shut them down using timer switches and mechanics.
What would you say to somebody, because, and obviously you've probably gotten this before, because we've gotten this before, just talking about this candidly and stuff. What would you say to somebody, especially in this day and age, when they say that type of mindset is overkill, or that type of mindset is like that's not the way I want to live? And, I'm sure that you've gotten that before. I'm sure you've gotten the pushback, right? So what would you say to that? What is the one thing that's like the glaringly obvious thing? And we probably already know what you're going to say, but what is the glaringly obvious thing of like, no, this is the way that you should probably start thinking?
As a man, you need to think that way, because even if it's not your fault, it's your consequence. Your woman shouldn't have to think that way. She should be able to walk through life and kind of like look at the butterflies and stuff like that. And that's cool. But if you fail and you're staring at the butterflies, you both die.
Yep.
And I think it is every man's responsibility to be the warrior and protector and provider for his family. I understand that this day and age is different, and everybody wants to say, well, men and women are equal. No, we're not. We're built differently. God made us that way. And no matter how much you try to force that type of mentality out there, it's not the same. Our bodies are built differently. Certain people are built differently. So, some of the guys who used to fight in the underground fights, Native Americans, they are not built the same.
No.
Dude, like, I remember hitting one of those dudes in the head, and I thought, that definitely would have taken me out. And he like scratched his head and got up, and I was like, well, shit. Right? I'm thinking,
Where's my clipboard?
Yeah, like Native Americans, Samoans, like people are built differently. But the species of men and women were built differently. And so your job is to be that for that person. But I would also say, why are you so concerned about what my capabilities of being able to protect my family? Why does that concern you, and why do you not want me to have that unless you have some kind of weird plan to make sure I can't?
Yeah.
And I'm not asking for permission because I've been in that boat before.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask for permission and you lose somebody or something that you love, that can't come back. And your woman will never look at you the same after she gets hurt or you get hurt. And you have to be able to, and it doesn't mean you'll always be able to handle everything, but be ready. Be as ready as you can. And trying to emasculate men in our day and age, it's hurting women, it's hurting men, and nobody will step up to it. And they've started conditioning women to go like, you want a feminine man. Yeah, until bullets start flying. And then when he's taking his shoes off, running down the street, and you're like, where'd you go? Right? Like, you're kind of like, maybe that wasn't a great choice. Mm-hmm. So you want to have that mindset of like, how do I be the best man I can be? And you only want a woman that wants that strong man also, right? If she wants you to carry some dog in a purse and she wants you to be super effeminate, I don't want to be your man, right? Like you can do that shit with that dude over there with his nut huggers on. Like, I don't want to be that guy.
Every other dude that lives in Scottsdale.
Like, I don't want to be I couldn't live with myself if the person I loved got hurt because I failed to be adequate.
Yeah. It's really important. We were talking about this last night on one of the coaching calls that we do, and it's personal sovereignty, right? And I think that's something that's been forgotten about for whatever reason, especially in the past 20, 30 years, it's like personal responsibility of like nobody's coming to save you. Like, why does everybody think that somebody's coming to save them?
Easy. Kindergarten.
Yeah.
Get in line. You stand over here. This is what you do. If somebody hits you, go tell the teacher.
Yeah.
I told my daughter before she went to school, she said, Daddy, what do I do if somebody hits me? I said, you hit him back. What if I get in trouble? I'll take you for ice cream.
Yeah.
I was like, you do not have to ask for permission to protect your body. And this is a principle I want you to have for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. If a boy touches you, you freaking slam his head into a table. And she's all right, Dad. Right? And she went to school and no kids mess with her. Why? Because of this amazing thing called consequence, which has been lost in our culture. You need 4 things in your ideology in order to think different. The first is conviction. The second is permission. Get rid of permission seeking. You also need to have the third thing, which is superior warrior tactics, right? Everything you do, if you know you're going to have to take on a bike, you train to fight a train. And then the fourth is warrior state change. You've got to be able to shift your mind in a moment. When I'm fighting, I don't act the same way I would if I was on a date.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're eating popcorn. I'm like, stack on me. Right? That's a weird date. Right? Like, that's going to be weird. But you should be able to shift it. You should be able to have a state change. Right? You shouldn't be sitting there in a mindset going, I always have to be this way. Now, I'm always looking. But one of the things I learned recently was how to be gentle. Right? That was not my natural state. Because for most of my life, I was in the state of survival, a state of, kind of being a warrior. Yeah. We cannot ask for permission to protect what we love because the people that you're asking for permission from do not have a vested interest in you keeping it.
Right.
And when you lose it, they're not going to replace it.
And dude, a big reason we're talking about this is because, like you mentioned, kindergarten, we're conditioned to act a certain way, follow a line, but we're also conditioned to pick up the phone and dial those 3 numbers, 911. Mm-hmm. And we got to be a part of an active shooter training 4 scenarios the other day with Jamie of Valor Protection, which is amazing.
Super cool dude.
Yeah. And we got to be essentially the bad guys. So they decked us out in the, the body armor and masks and helmets and all this kind of stuff. And we were pretending to be active shooters, and guys from the federal agencies, local agencies, and law enforcement would basically practice coming into a room, finding the threat, neutralizing it, which was us in different scenarios.
How many times did you kill him?
A lot.
A lot.
We got him a lot. Yeah.
See, that's the problem. People go, "Oh, he's a cop, so he's got training."
Well, that's kind of
he
my
understands
point.
how
Yeah.
to not get sued. Right. Like, I mean, they're agents of the state that are trying to operate, but they're also a reactive force. I train a ton of officers.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you themselves, we're a reactive force. Unless somebody calls us, we can't get there. The first responder is you.
Right.
You have a responsibility and an obligation, not only to your own safety and well-being, but every other innocent person around you to keep them safe. That is your job as a man, and that is your job as a warrior. I'm sure you have a female audience too. I do a lot of coaching for men. Ladies, you're the same way. Like, the women should understand, most dudes will film you getting stabbed to death because they don't know how to protect you.
Yeah.
You need to be capable of being able to handle that.
And that's essentially our whole point. Like, we even have it on our website. It's on you.
Yes.
You know, sure, dial 911, and we love the cops. We support them. We do charity for police,
100%.
and we got a lot of friends that are there, but they can only get there so fast. And when they get there, depending on the scenario, they might be new to that as well. So, like, cool. I'm hoping they're coming, and they're coming fast. But I know that I need to do everything under my power to take care of me and the people around me.
Well, and that includes the officers too, right? So the
That's
officers, it is their responsibility to go and get above and beyond training outside of what they're getting, because your agencies may not be willing to pay for that.
Right.
They'll say, well, we don't have a budget. And every time there's a shortage, what's the first thing they cut? Training.
Mm-hmm.
So like, we can get some more body cams to get you guys in trouble. We can do more of this in order to cause this problem, but they're not going to give you something to save your life. And this is where I feel so bad for law enforcement right now, is that they have to choose between a career and saving their life and whether or not they can feed their family.
Yep.
And the departments that support their officers, my hat goes off to them. The ones that do not, I don't respect you, right? Because you should be looking after your officers, because the things that these guys have to face on a daily basis and what they have to deal with. And then a lot of people, when the officer came to the car, he was a dick. Okay, what else happened throughout the day? What you missed was the crackhead that just spat in his face, was screaming and yelling at him, and he doesn't know who you are. When he's approaching that car, you might be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being like he's a dick, show him you're not him. And just be respectful. Officers appreciate respect. They appreciate the fact that you appreciate them. And when we're dealing with training, a lot of these guys, keep in mind, they're overworked, they're underpaid. On their off time, they're showing up to court, and then they're still trying to fit in time with their family.
Yep.
So we've got to figure out a schedule for them to be able to operate and function in real time that works with their family to still keep themselves safe. And that's why you can't give them super complex systems that take 8-9 years to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my workout in the morning is about 30 minutes. You can work out hard or you can work out long. You can't do both. So I do a 30-minute workout, and part of it's called Assassin Fit, that allows maneuvers that I do to be functional, so that when people might attack me, I'm also utilizing an exercise that's based off the principles of combat. I don't train to fight men. It's funny because somebody just recently they're like, this guy fights like a spaz. 100%. That's part of my technique, right? Is I like to be the guy that can fight demons. And when I was little, and I'm going to give your audience a tool to do, close your eyes and imagine somebody attacking you. And where that imagination attacks you is the vulnerability that you need to work on.
Mm.
Your subconscious mind knows where you're weak. And so what I used to do as a kid is I would close my eyes and I'd see things attacking me, but they were always demons. There were things that could attach to walls and jump off and flip and spin. So I learned how to jump around and move and dive and whatever. And when you can fight a demon, a human being's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why sometimes when I fight, I'll climb on people, you know, I'll
Yeah.
hit them. I won't hit them hard, you know, if we're just sparring, it just looks violent, but it's like, you know, but when I'm fighting, it's different. Like in the underground fights, I fought way different. And I've become comfortable being uncomfortable in the world of violence.
A little bit ago, you talked about 3 types of attackers.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to go back to that, because I've kind of a question about that. I'd like you to break that down a little bit more, because I think that's really fascinating, because I 100% agree with you on those 3. And I also want to know, which is the most dangerous in your view? Which of those 3 attackers is the most dangerous to you? And I think we're probably going to agree on which one.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, they're not mutually exclusive, right? So a crusader could also be a criminal because they're breaking the law.
Sure.
And they could also be crazed. But when you look at a criminal, typically they're hedonistic. They want what they want, and they want to leave without conflict. I would argue that is probably, if it is in itself mutually exclusive, that would be the least threatening person. The crazed, you don't know. right? Because they could be mentally off. They hear spirits or voices telling them. And here's my little conspiracy theory, if you will. I don't believe people that are schizophrenic are actually schizophrenic. I think that they have something in them that allows them to see and hear things that the rest of us can't see, right? There's a dimensional veil and not everybody can see through it. We've all seen dogs barking in a corner. And we're like, what are you doing? There's nothing there. And then you feel that little weird chill down your spine. Something's there. You just can't see it. They can.
Yeah. Well, the way that schizophrenia is diagnosed is kind of fucked up too. So
Yes.
it's like, do you hear voices in your head? Yes.
Dude, I
Oh,
hear voices
doesn't
in my head
everybody?
all the time.
Right. So,
It's whether or not you're listening to them that becomes a problem, right?
how loud
So-
is this voice?
So when you look at crazed, that person may be willing to kill you because they feel like that's what the other dimensional whisperer is telling them to do,
Mhm.
right? And then you have the crusader. This is a person that feels that their holy calling is to take you out, and they're willing to sacrifice their flesh in order to do it. I think they are perhaps the most dangerous. Now, I would also argue that that's exactly how you should be,
Mhm.
right? So I'm willing to sacrifice my flesh to protect what I love and care about. You cannot test that if you do not put yourself in adverse environments. I'm talking cold, getting out there in the 110-degree weather and trying to work out. Check with your doctor first so I don't get sued, right?
Stay
But
hydrated.
stay
drink
hydrated,
water.
all that good stuff, right? But like you've got to experience adversity, right? One of the things we used to do before we did the stick fights is we'd actually hit each other. We started with something soft. It was like a t-shirt, just conditioning, right? And then we moved up to like this, it was like a canvas strap that we were whipping with. It became a leather belt. And then we'd sit there and hit each other with sticks. And you get to the point where you hit them as hard as you can. And the person's job is to stand there and take the hit without showing it. Why? Because it's your ability to compartmentalize pain, right? So when we learn how to make pain our servant, which fuels us into the action that we need to do, because there's a difference between discomfort of hurt and injury.
Mhm.
Injury is bad. Hurt is a weakness that you haven't conquered yet, right? It hurts to do push-ups. Why? Because you're weak. If it hurts to do push-ups because your shoulder's coming out, that's injury, right?
bit
So there's a different thing. So we need to identify that first. But when we start to look at these typologies, we also must understand what we must become in order to beat them, which is a better question. Which one must you become in order to beat the worst one? A crusader can only be beat by a crusader.
Yeah.
And so you having the conviction of your heart willing to die to protect your wife, your children, your kids, whatever, that's something that a lot of people have lost. And I've talked to a lot of young men, and this is why I respected. Recently, I had a young man come and he wanted to challenge me at where I live. And I actually respected it because he was willing to face that, and it was intimidating for him. I respect men that face what intimidates them. What I don't respect is when a guy goes, well, I don't know if I want to do that because I could get hurt. I'm like, don't be a little bitch, dude. Step up to the plate. Getting hurt doesn't suck. We're all going to die.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how cool can you die? Right? I don't want to die doing something lame, but if I died because I'm trying to save my child or my woman or an orphanage, and I jump on a drone and it spins uncontrollably and takes out 15 terrorists, what a cool way to die.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to make songs about me and everything, right?
Yep.
That's awesome. I don't want to die doing nothing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to die well.
I was just listening to a podcast with about Benghazi, and Mark Geist, Oz. He said something almost the same as that. He said he got blown up on the roof. His hand was falling off, and he had shrapnel all over his body.
Those
and
dudes are
everything.
freaking studs.
And he was gonna. He asked them to get him to the ladder, and he was gonna climb down the ladder. And then as he was climbing down the ladder with one hand basically off of his body, hanging off and everything, he was thinking to himself, he's like, "Fuck, don't fall. I do not want to be the guy that just survived a 44 millimeter round, basically blowing myself up, and then I fell off the ladder and died."
Right.
And he had that same mindset of no, if I'm gonna die cool.
Those dudes are just so amazing, and I look at men like that, and I've never been in special forces. I've never been a Navy SEAL or anything like that. I've had the privilege to work with them around the globe, and I honor them, right? These guys have a never die attitude. Mark Simos, who's a Navy SEAL, I met him at SHOT Show, and I was watching this Navy SEAL thing I think it's on Prime, and I saw his name at the end and I called him on his cell phone. I was like, dude, is that freaking you? He's like, yeah, and I'm working on a new series. I'm like, dude, badass, right? Like, I mean, they have such a cool mentality in the way that they function, the way that they think. Jeremy Mayhew, who's another Navy SEAL, he's developing some software to actually go after human traffickers right now. Like their heart to go after warriors never stop, to go after the enemy.
Yep.
The bad guy, it never stops.
True crusader.
Right. And I love those types of crusaders. They will fight the evil. They'll go after everything that's there to stand against evil. And they're not narcissistic most of the time. You know, I mean, they have to have a level of confidence that's pretty intense, because you don't want a guy up on a roof being like, I think I might be able to hit him. You want the guy going like, I got this.
If you catch them at the Brass Bell in Coronado, they might be a little narcissistic.
Yeah.
A couple beers in them.
But they're cool dudes, right? And I respect men like that think that way. And I think all men need to adopt that type of mentality. And if that's not in you, that could be a problem.
One of the most recent things I heard along those lines that I feel like I want to bring up just to put it on record, I thought I was blown away by it, was Nick Irving, nicknamed the Reaper. He was a sniper, and he was on Sean Ryan show, the podcast. And he was talking about a fight that they were in, that he was in a room with one of his dudes, and they didn't think they were going to make it out. They said, if these guys make it past whatever it was, whatever the scenario was, if they come over here, basically he's pulling a grenade and they're both going out. And he's like, we're going to go out with a bang. We're not going to just run away. Mm-hmm. But what he told his guy, he goes, hey, he dapped him up, and he's like, hey, just tell my wife it wasn't a bitch.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, just thinking, like, cause I'm like, dude, he's out there in his prime fighting, doing his thing. Like they're in the middle of combat. Like it was one of the biggest combat tours. I think he said his platoon did like 1,000 kills or something over the period that they were there. But that was his potential last thought. Like, just someone tell my wife I wasn't a bitch,
because
and then we'll just blow myself up.
That's his name, though.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, you think your name is your name that you were given at birth. Your name is the name you earn through life. And when people get to see who you are, that becomes what you're called.
Yeah.
Right. Like, my name isn't Michael. It's what I do. It's how I teach. It's how I live. It's how I shine. Your name becomes that last moment. And so that dude, even to think that way in his last moment, shows you what his name is.
That's right.
Right. And so men look at that and they go, I want to be like him. And that is what, like, we should strive for, right? Like, are you living a legacy?
Yep.
If you don't know what your purpose is in life, it's because you haven't found a cause worth dying for yet.
Yeah.
Find a cause worth dying for, you'll find a life worth living. And when you can start living that way, it won't just be because somebody tells you to go to war. You'll go to war on your own without getting paid for it, because it's actually what your mission is.
Yeah. It's so wild to me to watch kind of in real time, watch our country specifically go from, a non-war time, when I was in 8th grade, to 9/11, to 20 years of war, which I participated in 8 of them. And then now it's only been a year, 2 years, whatever, since we've been in, quote unquote, active conflict. It's been a couple of years. And to watch how quickly the pendulum slides the other direction, right? And to watch how quickly that mindset goes away when there's not a purpose, right? When there's not a collective purpose, when it's just, I don't know, I got to figure out where I'm going to get coffee today. When there's no imminent threat, there's no, there's nothing to attach to, right? And it's you just watch it so quickly. Like the guys that are one generation younger than me, and I'm 36. So the guys that are 30 right now, they have such a wildly different mindset than we grew up, than I grew up in, than Justin grew up, than you grew up in. And it's so crazy to see that the pendulum go that far.
Here's why, in my opinion, right? Because you said it, that collective consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. In our generation, we weren't. We were independent warriors. Yeah. Right. Like, so we even as kids, like, you're in the military. Before you were in the military, you were in the military. Guys make it into those special teams, not because of the fact they made it into special teams. It's what they were before they got there. Right. So as an independent warrior, you are always training so you can join the collective. But it is your job, whether there's war or not war, to be ready for war. Mm-hmm. Whether there's an active shooter or not an active shooter, to be ready for that. You're going to tell your wife, as you're sitting there at the movies, you're like, hey, babe, get under the seat. We should have signed up for that course.
Yeah.
She's like, thanks, asshole. Well, now we're both going to die and we're never going to sign up for the course. And if we make it out of this, I'm divorcing you. Right? Like, I mean, it's like you've got
Epic failure.
Epic failure.
Yeah.
Without that conditioning and without the mindset of being willing to. And people say, well, how do I start? Getting out of bed every morning, letting your feet touch the floor, blessing the name of the Lord, getting down on your hands and knees and praying, and then doing something that's uncomfortable, like 50 push-ups. And if you can't do push-ups, do something else. Maybe that's a plank. Yep. If you can't do that, go turn on the cold water while you're still foggy and you're like, man, that's going to suck. I don't want to do it. And you get in there and learn to suffer without complaint.
Yep.
Learn how to let things make you uncomfortable and not show it. Because now in that stoicism, if you will, you become learning to do something that most people can't do. Self-control.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about President Trump's response the other day to being the victim of an assassination attempt with a sniper, because we've talked about it here a couple times. Most people are never tested like that, especially outside of military. Nobody, for the most part, is ever the subject of a sniper. And I was really blown away by his response. Like, the dude essentially took a round to the head, barely missed death by millimeters, and stood up with such just rage and defiance and just the ultimate alpha response. And I was just like, that's not something that can be faked. Like, that was real. And most people never get a chance to be tested by that. And I'm just blown away by that, because we've talked about, the Reaper, we've talked about guys in the military and stuff like that, like, he's never been subject to that. That's the first time he's ever probably been in any sort of danger like that. And the way it came through, I was blown away. I want to know what you saw. And we don't have to talk about what went wrong or anything, but just that response.
Anytime somebody responds in a face of potential death with, I'm still standing and I'll defy it, I respect that, right? Like, most people don't get to be tested. And it's not that they don't get to, they refuse to be tested. They avoid it at all cost. So if it does happen and you get the opportunity, again, we talked about names. When you show who you are, that becomes your name. And when you are able to stand in the face of death or something that's uncomfortable, or having a knife to your throat, or any of the number of things, like, and you get back up and you start learning how to function at a different level, you shift as a human being. And everybody around you shifts based off your frequency.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's important to take away from your question is, how can we as men be more willing to step against the defiance of people who want to hurt us, right?
Yeah.
Or harm us. I love the fact that, I did a thing on my Instagram, obviously got a whole lot of kickback from people saying, like, the dude handled it like a stud. Right. And like, well, this and that, everybody's going to have their opinions. But if that was what it was, he handled it like a freaking stud. I respect any man that gets hit in the head with anything, less alone a bullet, and takes it like a champ. Right. Like, that's cool. Mm-hmm. So when you sit down and you go, what is my takeaway? I think the question for the audience should be, would I have responded the same? Would I have taken something like that? Would I have been scared? Or would I have recognized my calling to show the people that I'm unfazed, and I'll still stand for them and stand up and go, hey, I'm still here, right? Like, I mean, that's a leadership quality and a trait that I think most men should try to emulate throughout their own lives of how they function.
I think that's a really good question to ask yourself, because if you just watch any of the videos from that day, you could tell that 99% of people don't react that way.
Correct.
99% of people hide, run, freeze, mostly freeze, which is a crazy, physiological thing that has never been a thing in nature. And it's like only showing itself in humans and rats. Like, we do a thing that rats do now. We freeze. And rats are one of the only, and mice or whatever, are one of the only creatures on earth that freeze during a threat.
Well, deer will do it too, right? And so you have a few, but typically it's not good, because if the idea is that you'll be able to camouflage yourself.
Right.
Fright is really about camouflage, which is a huge problem if the enemy can see you.
Sure.
Right? Because you can't see me, right?
Yeah.
I'm
not moving.
He sees me. Right? They come after you and start shooting you or whatever. So that becomes an issue.
Yeah. I really like what you said, though, about your name being defined by those moments, right? Because at this point right now, nobody will remember President Trump as a billionaire who built buildings in New York, or the guy that was on the I don't even remember the name of the show now, The Apprentice. Or they won't remember him for any of those things.
They literally didn't even remember now.
I didn't remember now. Yeah, they will remember him for that photo that was taken of him.
Yeah,
with blood on his face, American flag behind him, and his fist up. That's what he will be remembered for, and it's because he reacted in that way. And it's not because he had a bunch of training. It's just that a quality, right? And it's a quality of a person who has put themselves in difficult situations their entire life.
That's that cross-reference training, right?
Yeah.
And we look at that and we say, how many different difficult situations can you be in? Like in one aspect, they're cross-related, right? Like it's cross-reference training.
Yep.
I can do a punch and it can strengthen something in a totally different industry, right? So the more you face adversity in high stress environments and learn how to keep yourself calm and behave a certain way underneath those, that's a good thing. We need to expose ourselves to more discomfort.
Yeah.
And the more we do that, I think the better we'll get, which is exactly why people should be working out with you guys, which is exactly why they should be signing up for your courses, the courses that we offer.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're talking about doing a course together here in the future. That's exactly why people should be thinking that way. Because
100%.
if you get comfortable being comfortable, you're controllable.
Yep.
Because as soon as I take away your comfort, you'll do whatever you can to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
But if I get comfortable being uncomfortable, you don't have power over me. I have power over me because I'm used to making me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And my pleasure now becomes from within instead of external. And I think that's something that we also as men need to really deep dive into. How can we get better at getting comfortable being uncomfortable and then going within and exercising our internals? How strong is your will?
Yeah.
How strong is your peace and your calm? And these are things, especially recently, that I've been working on because I'm like, okay, I've got to sit here. I can't look for anything outside of myself. That's what's got me in trouble. I got to be at peace within. And you have those days. And if you're a man doing anything great, and a lot of guys won't admit this, you have those days. You're like, dude, sometimes it feels like it might be easier if I died instead of living. Business is hard.
Yep. And
guys won't say stuff like that, but they experience it. You know, you come home and the wife is upset or the kids are throwing eggs at you or whatever it is, whatever happening. And you're just like, dude, this is not what I expected.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to get through those moments. It's mission over moment. What you're feeling in the moment doesn't matter as much as what the mission is. And maybe that's to win back somebody's heart. Maybe that's to take that little girl that you were, that little daughter that you took a picture with the other day while you were laying in bed so that she can live the life you never got to live as a man. Right? So she can have the father that maybe you didn't have. I don't know you guys' upbringing, but that was my big thing. I was like, I want my daughter to know that she has a dad and I still reach out to her and I do as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my objective, right? My job is to give everything that I can so that they don't grow up the way I didn't. That's why we suffer, because the mission matters. Your mission matters.
Yeah.
What you choose to do on this earth stands for something. It becomes your name. And it doesn't matter what you build. Buildings fall.
Mm-hmm.
Legacies don't. So when you actually activate yourself in the life that God's given you, your children's 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 children should be talking about you.
Yeah.
Christ did most of his acts on this earth over a period of 3 years. We are talking about him 2,000 years later. Have the last 3 years of your life been worth talking about for the next 2,000?
Shit. Damn.
That
That's
should be your
definitely-
fire.
I mean, that's definitely something to think about for sure.
So if there's, there's a man out there, a guy out there that resonates with this, right? And when you say mission over moment, right? But they feel like they don't know what their mission is. What would you say is your best advice for them to find their mission, right?
I'll give you some tools, but I'll tell you that's one of the things we actually do in our training too.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it. Like a lot of people think I just teach people how to kill bad people, and that's a small part of it.
Yeah.
The bigger part of it is the mindset and the mission and developing a way of life and figuring out how to function. But a couple of things that you want to do right off the bat in order to develop a mission is understand what mission is, right? It is a targeted end game to accomplish and achieve something. So if you don't know what that is in the 4 areas of life, you want to target that. There's 4 areas of life. Everything in life can fit into one of these 4 categories: spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial.
Mm-hmm.
We call it the life diamond. Another way to look at it is your connectedness with God, your consciousness of emotions, your conditioning of mind and body in currency, whether it be fiat, cash, energy, frequency, etc. Right? What is your mission in those areas? Lay those out. Start to build out that mission. And then you go, okay, this is my end goal. Then you start looking at contingency. What happens if I get midway through this and I find out that's not God's purpose for me and it goes this direction? So now you create a process for reevaluation. Typically, we do 3 M's: measure, monitor, modify, right? Do you have milestones you're hitting? How are you getting there? How do you measure it? How do you monitor it and keep track on it? How do you keep your finger on the pulse? And then how do you modify it when you need to? Because keep in mind, life is funky, right? Everybody when COVID happened, they're like, here's my 5-year plan. And you're like, you can just burn that in the trash right now. Right? Like everything just went out the window. People are like shutting businesses down and, the virus can only go up to 6 feet. So as long as you're sitting in a booth,
Right.
you don't have to wear a mask. And just stupid things. And everybody's just buying into it. Your whole world changed. But what the master does is they figure out how to get that mission functioning. And then realizing that everything that happens that's outside of your control is part of your mission. It's God changing the direction of your trajectory. And as a helicopter pilot, one of the things that you start to understand real clearly is how important trajectory is, right? So you start going, okay, where am I going? How am I getting there? But also understand that you're on the current of life. And it's going to ebb and flow. You're going to get those heat thermals that are going to bust you up, and then you're going to get the turbulence of life. Can you stay on course? And sometimes do you have to reroute the course? So from the mission standpoint, getting those 4 principles, I think, would be the first biggest stance. And then the rest would be figuring out how to measure, monitor, and modify from that first segment. There's about 4 other parts that we take our clients through to help them really hone in and dial that in. But I think that would be a good start.
Yeah.
I think just starting with a course like yours in general is a good place to start, because I think a lot of people will, like we've said this a lot here, will look for an easier way and they'll start something like jiu-jitsu or boxing or, something like that, which is a long-term thing, which is great.
Yeah.
Cool. Good skills and everything. But I feel like when we went through your course, that really opened my eyes to other things I need to improve on. Much faster than I think if I had just started jiu-jitsu and, okay, now I need to get better at this type of thing. You and your courses identify so many different holes in our game with what we think we can do to another body, how we respond to someone coming at us, and then also the things like the mindset, and be willing to just say yes time and time again to get hit or volunteer for this or do this new thing. So I think if people are listening and they're like, okay, I need to do something more, what do I do? I would say, honestly, and this is not just to plug your thing, I would say, but for real, get into one of your courses. Go out there, and in one day, your eyes are going to be open, your mind's going to be open, and that, I think, is going to let you know, okay, I need more of that, but I also need to get my ass in shape. I also need to learn how to punch. I also need to learn how to take a punch. Now I see why I should maybe do jujitsu, because
how to do jujitsu properly.
Right. Or you showed them that they are not where they need to be.
Right.
And I think you can do that very effectively and very quickly, and to really kind of open people's eyes.
And beginners are the best students because they haven't been tainted by all the conditioning, right?
Yeah.
When you look at something and you go through, we had a guy that was a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he was like, I think I could beat you. I was like, cool. Well, I'm going to take the shock knife and try your jiu-jitsu. And I stabbed him like 50 times. And he's like, shit. He's like, my jiu-jitsu doesn't work. And like, it works. It just doesn't work like this. Right. So like, I think one of the big things that's important for people to understand is how do you train and getting your mind around it. Like every time you punch a bag, you shouldn't be punching a bag. You should be punching, feeling what it feels like to be threatened. Like you experience it in your heart, like, oh no, I'm going to die. What does that feel like? This guy's going to hurt me. He's going to hurt my family. And then hit that bag so that you start conditioning the behavior of the psychology of the emotion so that you start creating the stimulus conditioned response, right? This is how I train my guys. Like we're like, this is the stimulus specific, here's the conditioned response. And then we create failures within it. And then we start to untie it. Right. And we're like, all right, now we're going to really screw you up. Now we're going to put you in cold water. And now you're going to feel this. Now you're going to do it. Right. So it becomes this amazing experience as you guys got to do inside of the course. And towards the end, when you guys had the accumulation exercise, you did the physical and you guys were carrying the buckets and freaking you had to put the tourniquet on the bleeding dummy, and guys were attacking you. I'm there, Mr. King, as he's running up the ramp looking for Mr. King to go and attack him. But there's this thing of like, how do you test it in real time? And that is the ultimate way to do it. And if you're not sure where to start, you can start with our study guide. Go to shockwavedefense.com/strategy. And it's a strategy guide that'll just give you kind of like, here's how to start your morning, right? Like just start there. It's a strategy guide for men. I work for men and I work a lot with men because I feel like that's part of my mission right now is to help create the rise of the warriors. I was literally at a restaurant the other day and this lady's like, why won't you train me? I was like, because you're not a man. She's like, do you hate women? I'm not sure how we got there, right? Like I'm a men's coach, right? Like it's literally like this concept of men need men right now. Mm. And I think more men are pulling into that. I'm not a huge proponent of all the different stuff that's coming out from men now where they're like, you should hate women, because I just don't agree with that. I think your job is to protect them. Your job is to lead them and guide them and shield them to the best of your ability. And if they don't want that, then you can't, right? You can't enforce it. But like at the same time, you do want to help. And I think men need men more than ever. We need to be brothers. We need to have that tribal connection.
It's a big reason we have our men's retreat next week, literally a week from today, up in Sedona. It's called True North, and it's for men only. We've had a good amount of women ask if they could go, and it's like, dude, like, we love you, but like we need to help ourselves so we can better serve you guys.
And men behave differently when women are around.
Oh, dude,
they don't
absolutely.
open up the same to their brothers. They don't engage with each other. A girl comes in and now all of a sudden it's this posturing thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the woman's fault; it's the men. Right. But they've got to get stronger in that. So they're not trying to do that.
Exactly.
How open is the field? Maybe I'll fly the helicopter out there.
There's enough space.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is it your land?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Give me the coordinates.
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah. It's our buddy Amadon, who's our partner in it. And he has a big 5-acre spot, and I'm visualizing it right now. There's definitely a spot.
Are there houses around?
Yeah.
We'll discuss the details.
Yeah.
Later.
We'll talk about it later. Yeah.
I was just envisioning myself jumping out of the helicopter into the creek.
Dude, I'm not sure your ass can fit in the helicopter. Like, how much do you weigh?
We might need to trim a little bit
because there's like a weight limit on the seats. Like you can't take people up there. You're a big boy.
Like 270 right now,
dude. You are right at the cusp because the weight is like 300 pounds. Like per the POH, you can't.
Dang. Yeah.
You're gonna have to not eat for 4 days.
So everyone should download the free strategy guide.
Yeah.
We'll have a link for that for you. But like I really would love, especially us guys and girls, but like to really consider taking your courses, because we've done it. We experienced the shock knife, and a lot of people might be like, the hell's a shock knife? Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's exactly a knife, but it's a shock instead of a real blade. So you do get simulated. It's not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah, but we used some of those, and we had another brand also. But yeah, they're great.
It's amazing, and I really do think we were talking last night on our coaching call about this, but I really do think guys and girls should absolutely test themselves. Like Bianca was all over the chat. She wants to start sparring. She's like, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I'm ready. I want to try this,
You always want to train with somebody that's like one level above.
Oh, for sure.
And they can actually make you feel like they're up here, but they're like barely touching you and hitting you, right? And so as you grow, as they grow, you kind of grow with them and give them a different resistance. But that's awesome. That's exactly what you want.
So when is the next Dangerous in a Day course? Do we have one planned?
We are shooting for August, September. That is our goal right now. We are securing the location because the old location's obviously not available. And if I do it where I live, I'll get kicked out of where I live.
Yeah.
They don't like it when you kidnap people, apparently. So we'll have a different location, but we'll get you guys more details on it as it gets closer.
Yeah. So in the meantime, everyone download the free strategy guide, follow your Instagram. We'll have all the links in there so you don't have to say it, try to memorize or nothing. But I would love for people to learn from you the way we are, because it's really helping us. Especially like, I'll just speak for myself here. Like as I'm training, I'm running, I'm lifting, I'm doing things, I'm getting into really good shape and I'm strong and all this, but I'm like, but I need to do something with it, which is a huge reason why when we did that, call it SWAT training the other day, I love the fact that I was bleeding and I got hurt and I got an infected wound over here from a simunition round and all this, because I'm like, I don't get that anywhere else. I go to the gym, I go home, I shower. My life is so easy. It drives me nuts sometimes.
Yeah.
And so just being shot by SWAT the other day, I was like, man, I think I am alive. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I think everyone should absolutely consider taking this next course with us in August, September.
Jamie kept asking us if we were okay. And I was like, yeah, dude, can we go harder?
It's the thirst, right?
Yeah.
There's something in us, and I don't know how to explain it other than this. It's going to sound super crazy, but like when I was a kid, we got physically disciplined.
Mhm.
And there was something about after you got physically disciplined, like you like wake up.
Yeah.
Like something comes alive in you. You're like, dude, I survived that. And it releases different chemicals
Mhm.
inside of your body where you're like, I'm actually okay. I can endure pain. And it removes fear. And I think facing pain helps you get rid of fear. And that
Yeah.
is my biggest goal for men, is to be the most fearless version of themselves that they can be. Where you can next time, maybe, God forbid, but you get hit with a bullet, like those SEALs do. And they're like, oh, I'm still in the game. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's like they have that mindset to just keep rolling out and keep fighting.
Right. And I think this goes for everybody. If you work in finance or you have a realtor or whatever, like, sure, you're not going to be a Navy SEAL with your hand blown off, most likely having to climb down a ladder. But if you just get a little bit of this, I think it really can wake us up to who we are at our core.
Right.
So if shit does hit the fan in the office or at the mall or wherever we're at least we've had a little bit of experience to where we're not completely freaking out and we're like, okay, I'm a little bit calmer than everyone else. And I think that's going to help me maybe lead my family and my friends to safety.
And if you're listening to this right now going, man, these guys are intense, this is scary, that's 100% normal.
This is real.
That's why you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we're good enough at what we do where we will take you where you are and give you the threshold that you need without overdoing it.
Yep.
Right. Like we want you to grow. We want you to get to the next level. It's not just about like come in and we're going to kick the shit out of you. Like that's a horrible business model.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also not good for the student. Right. So what you want to do is you want to say, hey, wherever you're at, come as you are. And we'll help take you to the next level of you. It's not the next level of him.
Mhm.
Like this dude's on a different level. You're on a different level. I'm somewhere else. It's not about us. It's about them.
Mhm.
And how do we get them from where they are to where they want to be?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
I
the
like what you
objective.
said about pain earlier too, and about compartmentalizing it. And then, there is a threshold when it comes to pain, and there's a physiological change that we don't need to go into. It's really nerdy and, whatever. It's like neurochemistry
stuff
and
like
stuff.
this.
I know you do. The audience probably doesn't. They're like, we don't care. But, there's a amalgamation of 6 chemicals that go through your body when you go through trauma and pain, and which literally get rid of fear.
Mhm.
They literally get rid of that feeling of that the prefrontal cortex shuts off,
Yeah.
and you go into lizard brain and you just start doing things based on what you've done before. And so it's like that there's a neurochemistry that happens when you bump that threshold up a little bit. And even getting in the cold shower the one time, that threshold goes up and it never comes back down, because you're always ready for that. Whatever amount of pain you've had, you're always ready for that again.
Well, it's your pain tolerance, right?
Mhm.
So like when I got hit by a car on my motorcycle, people were like, doesn't it hurt to get hit by a stick? And I was like, the car hurt more, right? So like you're measuring everything against that last pain
Mhm.
threshold.
Yep.
So the more you can expose yourself to that without killing yourself, the better off you are at being able to have those coping skills to deal with it when it presents itself.
Oh yeah. Well, dude, it's been an honor talking with you as always. Thanks for sharing all this stuff. And I think there's so many takeaways from here. On my notes, I don't know, I got at least 30 reels that I want to cut out of this because again, it's not about social media. It's about, there was 30 or more key things that you said here that I know everyone needs to hear. This is just a taste of what you teach in your coaching groups and in your courses and in your strategy guide and all that. So I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. You guys are great.
Likewise.
Appreciate what you guys are
Anytime.
doing for the community.
Oh yeah, brother. Appreciate you.